On November 17, 2012, José Salvador Alvarenga left the coast of Mexico for what was supposed to be a short fishing trip. He was an experienced fisherman. He had a small fiberglass boat, and he had no idea that he was about to disappear for more than a year. Alvarenga was heading out to fish for sharks with a young crewmate named Ezequiel Cordoba. They expected to return quickly, but the Pacific had other plans. A powerful storm struck. The wind pushed their small boat farther away from the Mexican coast. Then, their engine failed. Their communication equipment was gone, and suddenly, they were no longer fishing. They were drifting. Alvarenga tried to get help, but there was no rescue coming. The boat had become a tiny speck in one of the largest oceans on Earth. At first, they still had some supplies, but as the days passed, those supplies disappeared. There was no refrigerator, no engine, no way to steer back toward Mexico, only the ocean. So they adapted. They began catching whatever food they could find around the boat. Fish became their main source of food. They collected rainwater whenever storms passed overhead, and slowly, the fishing trip became a fight to survive. Then, the two men became separated from the world completely. No radio, no land, no passing ships, no idea where they were. Just endless Pacific water in every direction. Weeks passed, then months. And eventually, something even more devastating happened. Ezequiel died during the journey. Alvarenga was now alone. One man, one small boat, and an ocean stretching for thousands of miles. From that point on, survival became a matter of routine. Catch food, find water, protect the boat, wait for the next storm, then do it all again. There was no calendar on the ocean. No sunrise meant Monday. No sunset meant Friday. Time became almost meaningless. The only things that remained constant were the sun, the stars, and the waves. But the ocean was not completely empty. Birds sometimes landed near the boat. Fish gathered underneath it. And during storms, rain could provide precious fresh water. Alvarenga learned to use what the ocean gave him. The boat itself became his entire world. His shelter, his food source, his only connection to survival. Meanwhile, back in Mexico, people had already assumed he was dead. His disappearance had become an old story. No one expected him to come back. Then, more than a year after he disappeared, something extraordinary happened. On January 30th, 2014, a man appeared on a tiny island in the Marshall Islands. His name was José Salvador Alvarenga. He had drifted across the Pacific for 438 days. He had traveled thousands of miles from Mexico, and somehow, he was alive. When local residents found him, he was exhausted, disoriented, and barely able to walk. He spoke Spanish. They spoke a different language, but eventually, they understood what had happened. A fisherman who had disappeared more than a year earlier had somehow arrived at their island. His journey had crossed one of the largest stretches of open ocean on Earth. And immediately, people questioned the story. Could a person really survive that long in such a small boat? Had the currents actually carried him that far? Was the journey physically possible? Scientists and ocean experts examined the conditions, and a later analysis of Pacific winds and currents found that his reported drift was plausible. The ocean itself could have carried the boat along a route consistent with his story, but there was still one enormous question. How did he survive? The answer wasn't one miracle. It was thousands of small decisions. He found food when he could. He collected rainwater. He protected his boat. And most importantly, he kept going. For 438 days, the ocean gave him almost nothing he could control. He couldn't choose his destination. He couldn't choose the weather. He couldn't simply turn around and go home. He could only wait, adapt, and survive another day. When Alvarenga finally saw land, he had been at sea for more than 14 months. After spending so long surrounded by nothing but ocean, the sight of trees must have looked impossible. But it was real. He had reached Ebon Atoll in the Marshall Islands, thousands of miles from where his journey began. A fishing trip that was supposed to last a single day had become one of the longest documented survival voyages at sea. José Salvador Alvarenga disappeared in 2012. For 438 days, the world had no idea where he was. Then one day, the ocean gave him back. And perhaps the strangest part of the story isn't that he crossed the Pacific. It's that for more than a year, he had absolutely no idea where the ocean was taking him. He only knew one thing: he had to stay alive long enough to see land again.